So I wanted to make this video for my students for my terminology management class that I teach to kind of show them some of the terminology resources I recommend in class. Full disclosure, not all of these resources will have different languages available. For instance, the language that you interpret might not be available if it's a language of lesser diffusion. Let's say, for instance, you interpret Nahuatl. These resources are probably not going to help you. So for those interpreters of languages of lesser diffusion, I highly, highly recommend connecting with interpreters who interpret the same language as you. And you can do that via social media. You can do that through professional networks like LinkedIn, literally just searching in LinkedIn in quotations. For instance, Nahuatl interpreter. It'll bring up some people and you can try and connect with those colleagues who interpret the same language as you. So without further ado, for those of us who interpret those languages that aren't as difficult to find terminology resources for, these are my recommendations, at least my beginner recommendations for medical interpreting students. So I have these divided up into a couple of different categories. The first one is multilingual term lookup. So multilingual term lookup, this is going to be your English, Spanish dictionaries, your English, whatever other language is available on these particular websites. And the first one that I like to recommend a lot of the times is actually Wordreference. And I'll show you why here in a second. So here we have Wordreference. Let's let Kelly, I'm switching between all these windows here. So for Wordreference, let's say, I don't know, the word constipation. So you look up constipation and you can see here under the Wordreference tab, it says constipation, inability to defecate, and then I have it as estreñimiento. So that is correct. However, you can see here that some folks, it says, I'm assuming this Argentina, say constipación. That is also technically something people say. However, it's kind of vague and ambiguous. Now, if you go to the Collins tab, you can see here it only lists estreñimiento. So Wordreference is definitely kind of like crowdsourced, right? So they have a bunch of different people giving suggestions, contributing. You even have these forums down here, and people will talk about in the forums. Now, these are not professional interpreters and translators discussing these things. So oftentimes the answers can sometimes miss the mark. But generally speaking, I like the reason I like Wordreference is that you can actually cross-reference between two tabs pretty easily. So the unofficial source Wordreference, they have estreñimiento and constipación. And then here under Collins, Spanish, English Dictionary, you have estreñimiento. So you can check the unofficial and the official sources. Now, let's try to look up something in Spanish. So we're going to go with a really hard term is boca del estómago, okay? This shows why Wordreference might not always be the best source because it lists here the pit of the stomach. Now, the pit of the stomach is actually conceived of in English as like the bottom of your stomach. Like I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach that something bad is about to happen. It doesn't mean it's at the top of your stomach. It means it's at the bottom of your stomach. Whereas in Spanish, la boca del estómago means the mouth of the stomach. So it's the opening at the top of the stomach. So kind of splitting hairs here, but at the same time, it's just to illustrate that point that, well, it's not always going to be 100% correct. Now, switching back English to Spanish, let's look up, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So now we can see here, it's not giving us those suggestions like before, because really Wordreference is designed for very short phrases or single words. So when we look, apple doesn't fall far from the tree, we might find some stuff in the forums, but look at all this stuff. You got to really sort through all these things, and then you can go down to the forums. But even then, the forums are in no way, shape, or form officially, really any kind of official source. So this is where we come to our second source here, which is Tureng. Tureng is kind of like my go-to for slang, regionalisms, and idiomatic expressions. So let's go here to my browser, and we're going to go to Tureng. So Tureng is actually default English Turkish, interestingly enough. They do have a Spanish English, German English, French English, Turkish English. So I'm actually going to switch it Spanish English. Now we're going to do apple doesn't fall. Oh, look, it already gave me a suggestion. So I'm going to delete until I get the suggestion. Okay, and then I'll maybe the correct one. Go back. All right. So now we can see a couple of different alternatives here. So this is really, really useful for like idiomatic expressions and things like that. Now, I'm going to look up a very specific word in Spanish that I hear all day, every day, which is pacha. So pacha is a term that a lot of folks in El Salvador use for baby bottle. Now, if you go on Wordreference and you look up pacha, it will list that pacha means baby bottle. However, it says that it's Central American for baby bottle. It doesn't mention the country. And then, oh my goodness, I'm getting a lot of emails. And then if you search baby bottle in Wordreference, pacha doesn't come up as one of the potential options. So these regional terms, they're really, really awesome to look up in Tureng. So our next little resource that I want to talk about, we're going to go back to our PowerPoint, and that next resource is Term Gallery. So Term Gallery is a multilingual thesaurus with suggested translations and common collocations. So this helps you to really see individual words in context. So we're going to go to Term Gallery. So here's Term Gallery. Of course, they have a special background up, it looks like. Let's look up in Term Gallery. So they have a couple different options in terms of languages. They have Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese, and Russian. So if we look up the word pain, now we should know how to interpret the word pain, right? Now, it gives us some extra context here. So we can see here frequent collocations. So collocations are the order of words. So collocations are things that just sound natural to native speakers of a language. So I love how it's giving me advertisements, gentle relief for pain. Okay. Now, if we go to more collocations, we can see much pain, great pain, chronic pain, sharp pain, physical pain, more pain, abdominal pain, feel pain, severe pain, terrible pain. So these are words that are commonly paired together. So another example of a common collocation in English is we say a quick shower. We don't say a fast shower. We don't say a rapid shower. We say a quick shower. So when we talk about pain in English, we typically don't say, and this is a common mistranslation I see, which is a strong pain. Strong pain. It's kind of strange. It's more likely for us to say a great pain or a severe pain. Great pain is a little bit higher register. So it gives you kind of all of the different meanings of these words. Pain, type of unpleasant feeling, something which annoys, somatic sensation of acute discomfort. It even gives us some of the suggested translations into different languages. So we can see molestia for a bother or annoyance. General, oh, it's such a pain to go to the store. Okay. We have other meanings. We have usage. We can see usage of words. So this is super helpful in terms of understanding, kind of painting a fuller picture of particular words. And we can even see how common these words are. So if we even look up the English word loo, loo is not going to be common usage in the United States, way less common. But that kind of gives you an idea of a fuller picture of that word. Next up, we're going to go to our next little terminology source here, which is ProZ Term Search. So ProZ, or I've heard some people call it ProZ. If someone has should probably ask, I'm on the ProZ.com forum on Facebook. I should probably ask, is it ProZ or is it ProZ? But regardless. ProZ is, as I like to call it, is kind of think of it like LinkedIn for translators. Now, interpreters also go on ProZ as well. However, it's definitely more translation focused. And because you have this great community of a bunch of translators kind of all collaborating on things together, you have the forums where they actually vote on agreed upon translations of terms. So if we go to ProZ here, so this is, you can go to proz.com/search, or you can go to the main site. Their front page is a little bit different now, and you go to term help, and then you go to search for terms. And then you can just see the breadth of languages they have available here. Look at all these languages, so many different languages. So this is a really great source for folks. Really, I mean, I like to say that of all the sources I have on here, at least one of them should have terms in your language, and this is the perfect example. ProZ is really great. So let's look up, this is great for technical terms. So we're going to go with English. Oh, I scrolled down too far. English. I really appreciate that they don't have English at the top as like the default. And then you go down here. I'm going to go to Spanish. Sorry, y'all. I'm a Spanish interpreter, so I'm going to default to the Spanish here. Spanish. Gotta scroll down a little bit. OP. Spanish. Oh, not Sakuma. I don't even know what Sakuma is. Sorry if you speak Sakuma. I don't know what Sakuma is. Okay. English, Spanish. Let's look for a really complicated term. Lower esophageal sphincter. So you can see I've already looked that one up because I knew what terms I was going to look up. Go to search. Oh, hey. We have lower esophageal sphincter in Spanish. We even have additional terms that are related. We can talk about esophageal, sphincter, all sorts of esophageal bulbs. So this is really, really cool for, if you're interpreting or even translating really complex medical terms. This is great. ProZ is amazing. And these are all translators, interpreters who are kind of voting on these terms and their translations. And you can even see the conversation surrounding why the particular translation was chosen as the winner of all the translations. So we're going to go back to our little PowerPoint. And we've talked about multilingual term lookup. I really try not to overwhelm people with sources when they're first starting out. I do want to say, though, in terms of monolingual dictionaries, so these are dictionaries, you're going to have your English dictionaries, only in English. You're going to have your Spanish dictionaries, only in Spanish, or whatever dictionary it may be. Monolingual dictionaries certainly have their use. Now, I want to say with your monolingual English dictionaries, really important to know which dictionaries come from where. So if you look up the word color in an American English dictionary, it couldn't be spelled C-O-L-O-R. You look it up in an American English dictionary, an Australian or British English dictionary, it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to bring up this Wikipedia page, actually, on comparison of English dictionaries. So we can see here the American Heritage Dictionary. Okay, well, that makes sense. It's an American dictionary. The Chambers Dictionary, Collins, Oxford, those are all British. The Macquarie Dictionary is going to be Australian. Merriam-Webster is American. Of course, New Oxford American. Oxford is normally an English or British English dictionary. So it's helpful to know what dictionaries you're using. If you're using an Oxford dictionary, you want to make sure, if you're interpreting in the United States, you want to use an Oxford American English dictionary, the New Oxford American Dictionary even. So just being aware of what dictionary you're using, super, super helpful. Now, when it comes to Spanish, of course, Kelly has her Spanish recommendations here. So here, my recommendation is, listen, I interpret in Richmond, Virginia. And here in Richmond, Virginia, the folks I interpret for are predominantly from Central America. They're not from Spain. Meaning, if we're always looking stuff up on the Real Academia Española, okay, that's, or RAE, that's Spain Spanish. Now, they do have some inclusion of Central and South American terms, Latin American terms, but it's minimal at best, to be quite honest. So we need to be thinking about the language usage of the population that we're predominantly interpreting for, and chances are Spanish is not going to be representative of that if you are interpreting in the United States. So what do we do then? What do we do? Well, we can go to this cool website called the Asociación de Academias de la Lengua Española. So we go here. Oh, hey, look. And then we have, let's go to the Mexican Academy. I have a special affinity for Mexican Spanish. All right. So we can see here, we go down, we go to Sede. And hey, look, they got a Portal Institucional. So sometimes they have websites available. You go to the website. Boop, boop, boop. So let's look up. I think the word that I looked up earlier was actually, you can go to Dudas Frecuentes, so it's just like the Real Academia Española. So it has like the dudas. So we have the dudas here. And let me go to C. They have some really cool topics here. Like, is it camuflar, camuflajear, or camuflajear with a G? And one of the ones that I found that was really cool, because it's very different from the Real Academia Española's definition, was cholo. We even have chilango. So we go to cholo. ¿Qué significa la palabra cholo? Ver detalle. So it even talks about the Diccionario de Mexicanismos. Okay, well, that sounds like a good source that I could look up later, right? So it'll even clue you into further sources. It gives you this particular definition. So we're talking about like the gang associations, the drug associations, the attire, and then it even talks about the use, talking about, and it even says referido a un indígena. Key difference here. So let's go to, you can tell, I was looking up tabaquismo. So if we look at cholo, so very different, very different. What is here in the Real Academia Española? So, and even the terminology that's used, dicho de un indio. So we have indio here versus indígena. Very different. Words matter, folks. So very different usage here. And I think that distinction is important when we're talking about, respecting the linguistic realities of the population we're interpreting for. So we are next going to move to our third column. So our third column is translations in context. So technically we've already kind of gone over one, which is Term Gallery, but I want to bring up this really, really awesome tool that I wish more people were aware of. And so that's why I'm talking about it right now. So MSD manuals or Merck manuals. Super, super cool. So you can go to the professional version, consumer version, or veterinary manual. I like to go to the professional version. You can go to the consumer version if you want to look at stuff that's going to be typically lower register, more generally understandable, but I like to get into the nitty-gritty. So let's go to the professional version. And so what did I decide I wanted to look up? Oh, peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneal dialysis. How to do diagnostic peritoneal lavage? Oh, that's super cool. Okay. But anyways, peritoneal dialysis. Sorry, I'm a nerd. So here we have an article on peritoneal dialysis. And this is not a Wikipedia article. This is you can see we have this healthcare provider listed. They reviewed this article. So this is reviewed by healthcare professionals, which is really nice. And then the cool thing about this is you read this whole thing, right? Ooh. First sentence is, peritoneal dialysis uses the peritoneum as a natural permeable membrane. Select language. Go to Spanish. La diálisis peritoneal utiliza el peritoneo como membrana permeable. That's super cool, right? So you have this whole article. So the thing about Wikipedia is you have an English audience writing the articles, you have the Spanish audience writing the articles. It's a translation. It's an exact translation. It is not going to be different. The format is the same. So this can be really, really useful. I honestly really, really like doing site translations of these articles in waiting rooms, at least in my head, when I'm waiting for an appointment. If I am interpreting at an orthopedic clinic and I find out, oh, crud, it's an orthopedic hand clinic. All right, cool. I'm going to read some articles about orthopedic hand conditions, maybe do some site translations of them. Boom, I'm ready for my appointment. And I can switch between languages, which is pretty, pretty cool. So that's our first little resource there in our translations in context. Our next one is Linguee. So the thing about Linguee is I used to use it a lot when I was in college in my interpretation and translation program. However, I have come to use it less because I used to use it a lot for hard to find idiomatic expressions. So idiomatic expressions like, well, let's see here. I'll show you what an idiomatic expression is. So we're going to go to Linguee. So here at Linguee, we're going to do teach a man to fish. Teach a man to fish. So there's a lot of variations on this idiomatic expression. Teach a man to fish. So give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for life. We even have the name of an organization called Teach a Man to Fish. So what you can see here, so these are not reviewed sources. So on the left side here, we have English. So you can see the URLs that these websites, pardon me, I had to yawn there. You can see on the left side the URLs that they're pulling these sentences from. And on the right side, you can see their translation. So you have a website, it's originally in English or it's originally in Spanish, and then you have a translation of that website. Now, the thing about this is, if that website is translated by Google Translate, well, the stuff on the right side is going to be not a good translation. But at the very least, you get enough data here to kind of scroll through and be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so you can see here, teach a man a fish and you'll feed him for a lifetime. And it says, ¿Cuánto es el número de lenguas que ha aprendido? So this is obviously not a correct translation. Yeah, teach a man a fish. What can it do for you? Introducción a teach a man a fish. So who knows? Maybe this is a book or something. So you can find, especially harder to find things on here sometimes. You can find different variations on particular sayings, which is nice. But generally speaking, this is just a starting point. I always say with all terminology resources, you want to, I wouldn't even say trust, but verify. Verify and then verify again, basically. Returning to our handy dandy PowerPoint. This last one, y'all are going to be like, wait, what? What are you talking about, Kelly? This last one here is actually Wikipedia. Now you'll notice I say titles only. So as I said with Wikipedia, English article is written by an English-speaking audience. Spanish-speaking article, an article in Spanish is going to be written by Spanish speakers. So they're going to contain even different information. It's not going to be an exact translation. And even if it were, it wouldn't be a professional translation. So that being said, Wikipedia has its use. So let's see what we got here. We're at Wikipedia. So I think what I decided to look up in Wikipedia here was stimming. So stimming is, for those of you who don't know, self-stimulatory behavior, also known as stimming, and self-stimulation is the repetition of physical movement, sounds, words, or moving objects. Such behaviors, also scientifically known as stereotypies, are found to some degree in all people, especially those with developmental disabilities. I interpret for a lot of patients with autism. And so this is a word that gets used a lot. Now, stimming. I really wanted to find if there was a Spanish equivalent to stimming, because everyone I ever heard use the word stimming would say estimming, so basically an Anglicism. I wanted to know, is there a Spanish word for stimming? So what you can do is, now you can see this article, self-stimulatory behavior, also known as stimming and self-stimulation, is the repetition of physical movements. We can go down here, down to the left-hand side, and you can even see, you can click on 3 more, and it'll show you additional languages that this article is available in. Now, again, not exact translation, but generally speaking. So we have autoestimulación, comportamiento. El comportamiento autoestimulatorio, también conocido como autoestimulación y en inglés abreviado como stimming, consiste en la repetición de movimientos físicos y de objetos. So a little bit different of a translation here, so you can see it's not the exact same information, but we at least have a starting point here. We have comportamiento autoestimulatorio, también conocido como autoestimulación. So we have at least some suggestions here. I will say that the connotation of this word is varied, so you want to make sure, of course, verify and then verify again. So then you can actually take this and pump it into Google. Pump it into Google. See if there are some websites out there that are originally written in Spanish about this particular topic. And then sometimes in the sources, you can find some additional sources in that particular language. Here, all of these sources appear to be in English, but occasionally you can find some very useful sources in your language, in one of your working languages at least. That is all I have for you in terms of beginner medical interpreter terminology resources. In the description of this video, you will be able to find additional links to additional terminology resources. Doesn't just end with this. These are just the ones that I like to show to my students because I feel like they give you a good breadth and depth of varied terminology resources. And in addition, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you're an interpreter of a language of lesser diffusion, such as, I don't know, I always like to use the example of now what, you, of course, none of these resources will have any resources available in your language except for ProZ Term Search. You can probably find some stuff on there. But I generally recommend for those interpreters of languages of lesser diffusion, if you cannot find a particular term in your language, or if you're really struggling at finding terminology resources, networking is your friend. Finding other interpreters who interpret the same languages as you. And as always, I'd like to remind everyone that part of the ethical principle in the medical interpreting codes of ethics of professional development is not only really working on your own professional development, but it's also helping out other interpreters with their professional development. So listen, at the end of the day, if you have an interpreter who's not willing to work with you or help you or share things with you, might be helpful to remind them that part of the ethical principle of professional development is to help other interpreters, and this is especially critical when it comes to interpreting those languages of lesser diffusion. So if you have any interpreting terminology resources that you'd like to share, please be sure to post them in the comments. Share them with me, share them with us, so we can all help each other. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video was helpful.